The Wednesday week is sponsored by Michael Constantine Wealth Management. We bet you can't find a financial advisor closer to Hillsborough Stadium.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Wednesday week. My name's Fudge, and with me tonight I've got Stevie, Simon, and Ben. Just the four weekers today. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of things discussed in the media, so I wanted to say this just from the outset today that we're probably going to be talking about something that some people will find quite objectionable. So, if you are triggered by anything that's discussed and what's been in the media of late around our stadium, then I suggest you switch off now. But in the interim, chaps, we've got a FA Cup third round to talk about that weren't too shabby, was it? You know what I mean? It was all right. Ben, I'll come to you first. Now, I was going through the notes from last week, and we were talking about the predictions that we all did. And I think Blair went with losing 2-1. You went with losing 2-1. John went with losing 3-1. Simon went losing 1-0, and I said we were going to win 3-0. I'm calling that a win. Because had we not hit the crossbar, we could have won 3-1 and had Chris Woods put his boots on the right feet. You know what I mean? Could have all been different. How did you find it?
Brilliant, really. I think that's what... There's not much more to really go into except it was brilliant. It's probably the best night that we've had since Brighton, and before that, for me, only really Arsenal. It's same season. There's only really bit, obviously, Wickham 10 years ago, but that were a little bit different. That were just going up. That'll always be top. But I mean, in terms of nights, that were up there with Arsenal, and I think people have not underplayed it, but it's took it a little bit for granted because it's Newcastle, and 6 years ago we were on somewhat of a level with them. We've played them within, recent memory. We've been on somewhat of a level with them. Whereas had it have been Liverpool, Chelsea, Spurs, Man United, I think it'd have been a full house and people would have completely lost the shit over it. But Newcastle are better than all them sides at the moment, and we've got to realise how big that was. And that could be massive in terms of what we do between now and the end of the season. That could be. I know we will talk, and we've talked about Plymouth are signing, so Ipswich are signing so and so. Everyone's doing the business. We're not doing any business. A win like that against Newcastle, and you don't really need to do any business at all except keep a certain player. So yeah, brilliant.
Palmer's going nowhere, mate. Liam Palmer's going nowhere.
I tell you what, actually, Ben. So, before I move to the other two, to the old lads, was there any players for you that stuck out for you in terms of, performance and who you thought they've had a cracking game today? And I know it was a great team performance. Don't get me wrong, but that's going to get splinters on your ass on this show.
Yeah, I don't think they're on that particularly had a bad game. Deli Bashiru may be a bit quiet, but I think first half we were reasonably quiet. Yeah, we had a couple of chances, but that was more to do with probably Newcastle's mistakes and us really playing well. In terms of people that stood out, obviously Windass, especially the second goal. Bosh. I mean, then Reece James, Liam Palmer. I said Liam Palmer did probably have his best game I've ever seen him have, potentially, at least that I can remember. Cameron Dawson's had a really good game. The save in the first half has got all the credit, and I think that it's been save of the round or something that they put on Twitter tonight. I think the one in the second half from, I think it was Elliot Anderson, where he's, it's just point blank, stuck his foot out and got there. I think that was an even better save, personally. And other than that, yeah, obvious one, Mark McGuinness. He's not gone yet. He's not gone yet. He might have gone back out, but he's not gone yet. So they're probably 45.
So yeah, Mark McGuinness is still with us right now. I mean, Simon, you saw it in the posh seats. How did that go for you? You must have got a great view from up there.
Right, okay. I got a lot of stick because when I turned up, there was an imposter sat in the seat behind us who normally sits below, but he decided to treat his daughter to the posh seats, didn't you, Steve? So, and the stick I got because I said last week that I wasn't bothered about what happened in this game, which I wasn't. But what I was bothered about was that performance. That performance was sublime. It was it's the best performance at Hillsborough, like Ben said, since Arsenal at home, I would say. Man for man, every player stood up to the plate and did a job. Everybody did. Michael Smith all the way back to Dawson. Just absolutely superb. And that then came onto the into the stands as well. The crowds were up for it. I mean, it was even it was busy. I thought it was busy in the two side stands, and then quiet on the Kop in regards to seats. I think Ben's probably right in regards to. I think people didn't see it as a glamour tie so much. Also, as well, straight after Christmas, that's always an issue in regards to straight after Christmas. It can be quite expensive, but the South Stand grandstand was fullest I've seen since the playoffs. But on the pitch, just everybody. Will Volks, probably his best game in a Wednesday shirt. George
It's interesting you
Byers.
brought up Volks there, Simon, because I feel like we need to start preparing ourselves for life after Bannon. You know what I mean? There needs to be a point. I mean, Ash used to bring up last season and the season before quite a lot about, without Bannon, we're absolutely clueless. We've not got nothing going on. And what we saw in the centre of the park on Saturday was something else, right? Like all of a sudden I thought, Bannon can have another couple of weeks off. Make sure you're proper fit for the running of the season, pal.
It was a different kind of football because obviously Bannon's always there who receives the ball. Everybody passes to Bannon for him to do that Hollywood ball or that great pass that he can do, and we know he can do. It was a different type of football. There wasn't that we need to get it to Will Volks or we need to get it to Byers. It was a case of they went about and did their job. They went about and thought, Will Volks was. There was a heat map. I think Alex put from the start put a heat map of Will Volks on.
It looked like someone shot it with a big juicy paintball right in the middle of it, didn't it?
Yeah, and that was his game. He never faltered through the entire game. And then him and Byers. I mean, everybody knows on the podcast my love for George Byers. And when he did the Cruyff on those two players, which led to the first goal, it was just. I mean, what is it? You ask your Google machine or whatever, or I'm not saying the A word because it's the one next to me. Smart speaker, yes, to show you porn, and that would be it. I think somebody's actually uploaded it onto Pornhub, so I believe. Yeah, it was just, it was amazing. It was just, and I thought in the first half we were good. We matched them, I thought, but then in the second half, they had to bring a £60 million striker on. Well,
this was it. I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting what you said about performance. Like, even if we'd have drawn that, if like I say, if Chris Wood put his shoes on the right feet and managed to, it's a donkey's ass with a banjo or whatever this phrase is, and we'd have ended up inevitably losing it or something like that because that would have taken the wind out of our sails. But even then, I wouldn't have gone home pissed off. I'd have been like, it's a good day. Like, we've put a performance in. We've turned up. We're 2 leagues apart from the richest club in the entire league. You know what I mean? Like, we've turned up. And you're right. There's a £60 million striker. That Isak that was up front. Like, that was it. That was his first game back after a bit of an injury, wasn't it? But then when they made some substitutions and Guimaraes is coming on, you're thinking, Jesus, what is happening? I've got Liam Palmer marking international quality strikers here. What? Did a right job.
The subs bench was worth something like 250 million.
Yeah.
And Depton Chansiri bought Sheffield Wednesday for 35.
Yeah.
So it just puts it into into perspective in regards to what we were up against.
Absolutely. Now, Simon, Stevie, we had a number of players turn up, and this is a great opportunity now to talk about your love child in LP2. I thought he had a great game. I think, and one thing I did make a note of before we started recording tonight was very much his fitness levels. Now, I know during the summer he did some running to raise money for charity, and that's obviously really paid off in terms of his performances on the pitch. He looks assured, he looks fit, he's chasing everything down. His face still needs an iron, but Christ, he's absolutely bloody brilliant right now, isn't he?
His face still needs an iron.
Why does he look 55 since he was like 18?
Sorry if you're listening, Liam. Sorry about that.
Look at Simon. Simon's 20 years older than him. My forehead's, not. But you know what I mean?
Your forehead's 20 minutes older than this podcast.
Yeah. Never even mind about the forehead.
In all seriousness, he's, I speak a lot about the guy for various reasons. I think on Saturday, it's a bold statement to say that was the best he's ever played, but I'm not going to be mad about it if that's what Ben thinks. I think he was a credit to himself. I think he was absolutely fantastic. I think just to sort of piggyback on what the other lads had said, and I'd agree with all of that from a point of view of Liam Palmer. I got frustrated sort of the back end of last season and going on to the start of this season when, you get the pundits, you get certain Twitter handles or different people will post on social media, this will be starting 11. This should be our starting 11 tomorrow. This should be our starting 11. For the longest time, he got nowhere near it. And he's played himself in. He's gone about his business quietly. I thought he's been an absolute revelation, going about the bits that he's doing. And the bigger players, the players that have caught the headlines of, let's be right. James has probably over the course of the last sort of 2-3 months done better. We don't need to talk about McGuinness. He's comfortably the best defender in the league. I'm talking about League One at the moment, without a shadow of a doubt. And we've got other players that are going to come and create and be a little bit more in terms of that shop window and those headline grabbers, but Liam Palmer is right up there with a lot of them. For me, we talked about the Arsenal game. I would actually say and argue that this is probably a bigger win. It's a bigger performance. It's a bigger night. It was the FA Cup. I'd have to go back and have a look at the Arsenal team, but I don't think Arsenal put out a team that was anywhere near at the strength of what Newcastle did, albeit bringing lads off the bench. But you look at the lads that they brought on. We've got the lad who started at right back for England. We've got Almer on, and I play a little bit of the FPL, so I like having a look at the stats. And if you look at it, you've got the number one defender in Trippier, he's the best defender statistically in the league based on those FPL stats. You've got the number one midfielder in Almer on, and when things went to shit, they've gone, all right, let's bring these big boys on. And to be fair, we handled them, we dealt with them. And it wasn't one person that dealt with them. It wasn't one position. As a team, we were absolutely phenomenal. Out of possession of the ball, because we had 25% of it. We defended like absolute troopers. But let's be right, we could have been in front through Palmer in the first half. Windass had a chance. Windass had another shot in the second half that the keepers had to palm out, which was a hell of a strike. He's hit the bar, so it's not like a smash and grab job that we've done there. We've comfortably done a number on, to be fair, pretty much outside of Arsenal, the best team in the league at the minute. And they didn't want to lose the game. They didn't concede last night. I don't think they conceded for 6 games prior to that. And we've gone and stuck 2 past them.
I tell you what,
put some respect on Sheffield Wednesday's name.
Absolutely. There was a statistic that that somebody's put out. Teams who Newcastle have lost to this season was in Liverpool. That's it. And then for some reason, Joe Cran managed to put it back to May to get Man City in there. I don't know why. It just said this season, Joe. You know what I mean? But yeah. So that's what we managed to pull off. So we're one of 2 teams in half a year to have beat Newcastle United, which I and you're right. It's not like they put out a load of kids. You've still got George Byers kicking 10 bells out of Joe Linton. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. They still brought on Guimaraes and Almiron. It's not like they've turned up with the kids now.
Botman's up there as well. He's playing week in, week out, and he started.
And Kieran Trippier, you know what I mean? He ain't shit.
They've started with Alexander Isak up front, who is probably behind Ireland, one of the best young strikers in Europe. And Mark McGuinness.
And he's had his head kicked in by Mark McGuinness.
He's back pocketed him.
Now,
can I just do one more? Sorry, Dan. One more. We talk a lot about McGuinness, and I've waxed lyrical about Liam Palmer. Just one thing I want to get off my chest that I never do. People people don't give enough credit, I don't think, to Reece James. I thought Reece James was better than McGuinness on Saturday night. I think he's an absolute revelation. And the fact people will say, why aren't Blackpool recalling him and why aren't Blackpool after him? Because they don't know what to do with him. They don't play him how we played him. And there's a lot of not negativity. There's a lot of doubting, and people, the more out crew will moan about his lack of tactical nous and his inability to have a plan B or something. He sees a picture with the players that he recruits in defence. All right, we'll go back and talk about Marvin Johnson not being a centre half last year, but he's got it right with Reece James, and people will talk about him being too small. You can go back sort of 15 years ago and talk about the Italian captain, a guy called Cannavaro, was exactly the same size, and he ended up winning World Cup.
This is what
I love the way you drop that in, like, and he ended up winning World Cup. So there's that. So that, you know what I mean. Now, Ben, I'm not going to talk to these old people about it. I'm going to come to you because we're the young kids. The thing that I want to talk about with yourself is VAR, because I know these silly old pricks here on the screen next to you. They'll go, well, it's rubbish, isn't it? What's the matter with you? Because they don't like change because they're old and stupid, right? Now, VAR for me, first couple of seasons we brought it in, we've used it wrong. You know what I mean? We're sat there measuring millimeters, and but the way the Dutch use it, they have like a zone of error, where the thickness of the line that they've chosen kind of crosses over. So we're not having these goals disallowed with a shoulder offside, for example, or if you want to make some headlines, say armpit, even though we know it's shoulder because you can score with your shoulder. So, you know, I need to talk about the fact that our first goal and their goal, I mean, VAR would have been all over that, right?
it's rubbish, isn't it? Get rid of it. I'll be honest. I think our first goal is on. I'm not. That's not biased or anything. If you look at,
I think in the Dutch way of using it, if you'd have used VAR, it had a chance of being on. But I think if you measure a line on the edge of the 6-yard box, I think I'd argue it's off.
I thought you were on. The picture I've seen is from ESPN that does all VAR stuff on Twitter. You'll have seen it. They had him on that other podcast thing.
Dale Johnson.
That's it. And he'd put the picture on, and the picture he'd put on, Botman's Bigfoot, were banging line with Windass's foot as well. That's the one I've seen. It looked onside.
Where were his little foot, Ben?
It don't matter. However, that's as unbiased as I can get. The one I've seen, he actually looks onside. It does look offside as you're watching it, and I can see why people think he is. But I think if VAR was there, I think he's on.
But the interesting one I find with that, though, is their goal. Because as the ball first comes over,
offside.
The actual translation of the rule of the rule of the game is that he's not interfering with play, even though he's stood right in front of the fucking goalkeeper, like he's there. Do you know what I mean? So how are you not interfering with play? It was the same with Salah's goal from the weekend as well. It was against Wolverhampton. It's not, the call wasn't wrong as far as the rule goes, right?
See, I've got in my head that the call was wrong because it's all about whether it's a deliberate attempt to play the ball, which is it's a horrendous rule, because like the Salah one, the defender's clearing it because he thinks Salah's behind him. He don't know whether he's on or offside. He's just got to clear the ball. You can't expect him to go, he might be offside. I'm going to duck under this and see what happens with Salah bearing down 1-on-1. In our case, with that goal, you can't expect Cameron Dawson to leave that one, can you really? Because it's going in. But I'm not sure that interpretation can be used when it's a goalkeeper saving it rather than an outfield player.
I don't think anybody knows anymore, because now, watch this now, I'm going to go to Simon. Simon, what do you think about some grounds having VAR in the FA Cup and some not?
Well, it's not a level playing field, is it, at the end of the day?
Even when you have got VAR, look at Wolves.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't watch a lot of Premiership football, but I watch a lot of the World Cup and some of the decisions that were made in the World Cup through VAR. I was quite shocked. I've read a lot about it and how some of the decisions that are made, and I don't think that it's ever been used how it was originally intended. And also as well, we were talking about it on site yesterday, is the fact that there's one league in this country that has VAR, and then you've got underneath it 3 leagues that are completely competitive, with none at all. We rely on the old way of playing football. And the one thing I've always liked about football over any other sort of ball sport like rugby and those sort of things is that it's a very quick sport. And the VAR has taken that out of it, because there are times when somebody scores and the crowd spontaneously applauds, and then it stops because is it or isn't it offside? And the fractions that they're working on is the big foot and the small foot. And in my opinion, I am an old man and I don't like change. If it's used correctly, and it had been used correctly as it was originally intended, then yes, use it. But what I've seen so far is that some of the decisions that come out in the end are absolutely wrong. And you can see it on the screen, it is still wrong. And it's, in my opinion, it's not being used correctly, and so it's ruining the game. In the FA Cup, I think it's ridiculous that you've got games who are using it and games that aren't. It should a level playing field. It shouldn't matter that you're playing at Arsenal's ground.
I think that's what the problem is. Like, you either have it or we don't. We don't do this girly wet dribble of having it, and I feel like we overuse it a little bit. We shouldn't be sat there measuring millimeters. That's not what it's there for, right? And then what we've done is manipulate the rules so much as well, where we don't even know what the fucking rule is about handball or offside or intent to play, or we don't know. So
Steve, well, I don't know. I don't know if you guys watch cricket. I don't watch a lot of cricket either, but I think in cricket, in regards to the video umpire, you're allowed to make so many calls in a game. There's a captain of the team. You're allowed to make so many calls. If you think that it is LBW or something along those lines, you're allowed to make so many calls. And once you've made all those calls, then that's it. It's done, right? So, and you have to be in your head that you definitely think that was LBW, or you definitely think that clipped the wicket, and then make that call. If you then find that isn't right, then it's a strike against you. And maybe football should be looking at that. That if a team protests so much, the captain has that decision to make that says, I want to go to the video referee on this because that's wrong.
Well, and then hopefully that will cut down the surrounding the referee. But let me tell you a thing about what I believe VAR is happening, and I think this is going to sound insane, but I want you to bear with me on this journey, right? So the entire world now is starting to govern towards people not wanting to speak to the man. They don't want to speak to the bloke. They don't want to speak to the person on the other end of the phone. Do you remember when back in the day, Simon, Steve, when you need to redo your car insurance, you'd have to ring up and tell them you're not doing it anymore, or you'd have to ring up to get it done again. Now you go online. Yeah, it's the same with having to talk to people delivering your food. There are so many memes about being an introvert and not having to speak to the person and speak to the bloke and talk to the man and speak to her. Everything now is governed and pushed towards people not having human interaction. And as a result now, we've got, those big old school referees that we used to have in the 70s and 80s, those big Brian Glover from Kes types that go, now bugger off, no offsides on a Sunday. Those type of people, they're starting to die out and they're starting to go. And what we've done by pushing these decisions up into the office, they can go, the referee can stand and go, hey, there's no point shouting at me. It's them who's done it, not me. What you on about? And what it's done is taken away. I mean, what is the point of the fucking referee now? If we may as well play a whistle noise down the PA system, and then point the laser on the pitch and say that's where the free kick's from. Like, what's the point? What do we need a referee for? Because now we can just have people going, well, that's it. It's not me. It's them upstairs. And I think it's a societal thing that we've done because people don't like talking to people anymore. You know what I mean?
I don't think people want to take responsibility either. And what I've noticed with in games is that a referee now doesn't make that big decision because he feels like he can just put it to VAR. Mm-hmm. So that ability to make those big decisions has gone. We have and the referee I thought was very poor on Saturday. I don't know what you guys thought. I thought he was poor.
Go on, Steve.
I don't think we've used I don't think we know how to use VAR yet.
No, we don't.
And I know that's everything that has been said. You know, I'm endorsing everything that's been said. I think VAR will eventually. It'll go two ways. It'll either die in the next 3-4 years, or we'll figure out a way. And in 10 years' time, we'll look back at it and go, "What the fuck were we thinking when we first started with it? Because we were doing this, that, and the other."
It's like when you look back at some of the things at COVID that we did when we first started and we didn't know what we were doing. And you're like,
we don't know yet.
Still babies.
Yeah, and that the thing about that is we are going to make mistakes with it, and we're going to disagree with it, and people are going to be up in arms about its use. And I'm not a fan of it. I want to watch football. I actually like the human error. You know, Simon's point about the cricket. I think that would give I've mentioned it before. I think that would give a little bit more responsibility to the captain rather than just saying, right, this guy's, you know, whoever it is, you know, you've got your Ronaldo. I'm senior player, so I've got to wear an armband. Actually give some responsibility to a player who's going to actually manage the players on the pitch and say, right, it's me. I'm going to be the conduit between officials, referee, and the manager, and it'll be me to have a bit of responsibility to say that call's right or that call's wrong, and I want you to have a look at it. Again, to your point previously, Dan, we're then getting away from, you know, the players surrounding the referee, which I absolutely abhor. I hate it. It annoys the hell out of me. I hate the gesticulating. I hate the rolling round. I hate the play acting. My little one plays, and having to explain to her why people are rolling around holding the faces. Now she's, what the bloody hell are they doing that for? You know, those sort of things are not what football's about, or what we were brought up watching football, apart from Ben. To, you know, watch it. That's not what it's about. But, you know, VAR will either come good or it'll die.
I think we have to find a better way to use it, because I think it's an easy headline right now, because all of a sudden, you know, journalism right now is getting quite tiresome, which leads me perfectly into the bit that I referenced at the top of the show. Like I said before, we're going to talk about some things that some people may find objectionable. So if you are triggered by talking about the events of 1989, I'd suggest you stop listening now. But now, chaps, there's been a furore. This thing has reared its head again, and the Sheffield Wednesday fans, understandably, well, rightly or wrongly so, understandably is the word I'm going to use, have become a bit fed up. Now, I'm going to tell you a story about what the word Hillsborough can mean to people. So I you know, some of you may know this, but I used to be a redcoat at Butlins, and during one of the shows we used to do, I used to make reference that I was a Sheffield Wednesday fan, and we were rubbish, and then the other presenter would start chirping me about it and stuff like that. It was just a bit of banter that we spoke about, and there would be a point where I go, right, my team, everybody get your hands in the air, and my co-presenter would go, look at that, 8 people with their hands in the air. It's like watching a game at Hillsborough, meaning that there's nobody with their hands in the air. You know what I mean? That was where the humour lay. 2 people from Liverpool, because they just heard the word Hillsborough, absolutely kicked off, and I got taken off that show completely. I was banned from it just because somebody else had mentioned that word. Now, it's an emotive topic for a lot of people, and understandably so. So what I'm going to do, and I'll come to you first, Simon, after this, I'm going to give you a timeline of events of what's happened at the Newcastle game, and then we'll discuss it from there, because I think what Sheffield Wednesday have done towards the end, we now come to the end of this news cycle, I think have absolutely full stopped it, and I just wanted to discuss it a little bit more, because what I have is an email here. Let me just pop it up from a chap called Richard. Now, Richard Exel, give us an email, and thanks for your email, Rich. He said, I'm still buzzing from the game yesterday, but I've got a question on another matter. I expect there are thousands like me who are desperate to see some changes made to our West Stand. Scenes from the Hillsborough disaster just won't go away. I don't know if others are pressing for this or who to ask. The major expansion considered when there was a World Cup bid just seemed too much and too costly. My suggestion would be to simply continue the gradient of the slope in the upper tier over the current lower tier, so it becomes the same gradient down to the pitch. One simple stand in keeping with the rest of the ground. The current central tunnel, which gives access to lower tier, would then be gone, and maybe a new roof too, if that can be afforded. Do you know if there are any others keen on raising this issue? Now, you know, someone's gone to the trouble to send us an email, So we'll go through it. So the timeline of events is as follows. God, this is a hell of an intro, isn't it? The timeline of events is as follows. So there was a chap called Martin Hardy, a local northeastern journalist correspondent that popped a tweet out 10 minutes before kickoff of people piling through the central tunnel that's referenced in Richard's email, and then he tagged in our local journalists, in Alex and Joe. And then Joe responded with something like, I'll ask the question. I don't know who he's asking, and that gave a bit more credence to it then. And then because there was an old school Twitter pylon, because we all loved them, it got picked up by the Daily Mail. It got picked up by TalkSport. You've got Jim White and Simon Jordan talking about it. I must admit, I listen to TalkSport every day as I'm getting ready in the morning. Didn't listen to it that day. I couldn't bring myself to listen to it because I don't want to listen to this absolute shite. Sky Sports News talked about it. And then the FA, the Times, and then after that, there was 50 emails to the supporters group of people telling them about how unsafe they felt in the concourse at the West Stand lower in Hillsborough Stadium. And then we were subjected to some graphics. The graphics that we all saw back in 1989 in the back of the newspaper of this big red arrow pointing right down the middle, whereas there's literally a sign either side of that saying if you've got ticket number something, go that way, and if you can go around the side, you don't have to go through that tunnel. Now, where are the failings? Is there a failing? Is there an issue? Or is this a little piece of journalistic disintegrity? Simon, I'll come to you first because you've got some personal first-hand experiences of that, right?
Yeah. Okay, so timeline following the disaster in '89. So obviously the stand was shut for a couple of years with a huge investigation, and I've got sort of three sort of links into this. The first of which is I used to be a steward at Hillsborough, so I stewarded sort of mid '90s. So I did Euro '96 and the League Cup final, Leicester Middlesbrough, and also the semi-final Middlesbrough Chesterfield. I've done countless Liverpool at home, Manchester United at home during the mid part of the 90s when we were getting big crowds. I also am fully educated in health and safety. It's part of my job that I do at the company I work at. And I used to work for the health and safety executive. And Sheffield Health and Safety Executive spent a huge amount of investigation into the disaster and how crowds react. And finally, I was involved in my current role of working at Hillsborough, putting the steelwork up for the television, the new big scoreboard, and was sort of involved with Chancery coming in and the stadium manager at that time. So anyway, to go back to when I was a steward, a lot of time and effort was spent with stewards in regards to training us and telling us about the changes that have been made at Hillsborough. And one thing that really infuriated me with that article that was in the Daily Mail and a lot of anecdotal stuff that has come out of people who probably haven't been to Hillsborough for many, many years. There are a lot of Premiership fans, who were commenting on it, who haven't been to Hillsborough in 20 odd years. And the Newcastle fans and people who were just piling on to this Twitter outrage was that the stadium has been the infrastructure. The stand looks very similar, but the infrastructure of the stand is hugely different in regards to the number of seats in there due to the capacity really reduced. The fact that there isn't that one tunnel that, as you said, Dan, as you walk towards that tunnel, they are left and right. You don't have to go down that centre tunnel. The actual slope running down to the ground was reduced because that was an issue, was the pushing of people towards when they were going in. So they reduced the slope towards the back of the goal. There's no fences. There's no pens. That open area behind the goal, if you actually go to Hillsborough now, sit in your seats next week, Fleetwood game, there aren't any seats behind the goal. It is a walkway that runs all the way down to behind that goal. A very wide walkway that people chose to stand in on Saturday. Also, as well, there are filters inside and outside the ground. So again, if you walk, there's lots of barriers outside which they can move gates, which directs people to different turnstiles. And also, as well, there's a computer system that runs CCTV, which immediately shows up any pinch points, and that's in that concourse as well. So in the stadium control, people are watching that, and the software they've got will show you issues before anybody knows about it. Because
So would you even argue, Simon, that because of the events in 1989, that the West Stand, or as the journalists like saying, the Leppings Lane end, because that grabs headlines.
Yeah.
Would you argue that that's one of the safest stands, given the focus that's on it? Is that one of the ones that people have looked at and gone, "What do we do here?" And we've
Look, there was a crowd invasion by Leeds a few years ago, which resulted in, why did this happen? They took another 200 seats out for that game, reduced the capacity down. You know, I wouldn't say it's one of the safest, because at the end of the day, it's inherently got its issues with regards to the sizes of concourses and stuff like that. The stand was built years and years ago. And this is another issue that we've got, is that you look at fans now who aren't used to attending older grounds. It's like 14 out of the 20 grounds in the Premiership are either brand spanking new or massively redeveloped. So there's very few people now going into concourses. Like you and I went to Southampton, didn't we? You could have had a game of football in the concourse at Southampton, but we've also been to the old West Ham ground, the QPR, where you go into a concourse, especially at half time, and you're really tight. Is that perception then that that's overcrowding? Because before you were at Tottenham's ground, where there's just loads of room, and look, we are used to it. I'm not saying it's right, but we're used to it in regards to the grounds that we visit now, which are very, very small and very tight. I feel that, unfortunately, there's been a massive pile-on here, and true facts have not been shown. And that article in the Daily Mail was disgusting.
It was disgusting. It was disgusting.
And what annoyed me was that, unfortunately, that there was no fight back. There was from the fans, but maybe somebody in the press should have gone back and gone, actually, no, these are the facts. This is the design of the stadium.
Listen, when it comes to the press and people discussing it, like I said, because the name of our stadium is quite emotive, I don't think any journalist in the world, apart from an absolute shithead like Kelvin McKenzie, for example, would absolutely even touch that with a 10-foot shit.
It's a taboo subject, isn't it?
It is a taboo subject, and and I hope that the families from 34 years ago get their thing. But if I was one of those families, and again, this is such an emotive subject, I was one of those families and saw two things. All those changes that have happened. We've played Premier Leagues, we've played international tournaments, we've played huge crowds in that stadium. We're 34 years down the line, and because some ginger arsehole on Sky Sports News was making it sound like he was wading through the last days of Sodom and Gomorrah, or he made it sound like he was walking through the bloody first 20 minutes of Saving Private Ryan. I would be offended that prick is trying to attach himself to my grief. Now, and rightly or wrongly, but that's how I feel, because I must admit I'm fed up of my team's stadium being essentially a swear word in some parts, but not like I don't agree. I don't disagree with why it is in some areas, and I find it so emotive. I'm genuinely angry that this has got so much legs, though, because nobody buys the printed newspaper anymore. And what it seemed like to me is that they wanted to get the words Crush, Leppings Lane, Hillsborough into as many newspaper articles and as many online bullshit, clickbait shit you can get your hands on, because you put those three terms into one thing and all of a sudden people lose their mind. And with some people, rightly so, and with others, you don't have the opportunity to comment, pal. Go on,
mate,
Steve.
you can add. I was just going to say, listening to you can add Sheffield Wednesday onto that list as well, because the thing is, South Yorkshire Police, the fingers being pointed at us. From a point of view of the article that has gone out there and in the journalism or the journalistic response from the Sheffield Wednesday side, to add an objective viewpoint. I think I mentioned it on our chat last night. I think our journalists, we're looking at Joe, we're looking at Alex particularly because they cover things. I would argue that they've got to, and they might come out and say otherwise if they heard this, they've got to be very careful in terms of what they do with the club, because they get access for us. And I know this is a bigger picture. At the end of the day, their job and their remit is to provide sound bites and information. I think Alex has posted a 900-word report, a review of the weekend, calling it one of the best weekends of, his time covering the club. And that's his bread and butter. So, for him to get the access to the club, you've got to be careful there. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be going out there and asking those questions. However, from my point of view, I think in response to everything that you guys have discussed, I don't want to add too much more to that. I don't have the experiences that Simon has had. And take this the right way, Simon, you're 5-6 years older than I am.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I haven't had that. I haven't had the experience of being a steward. What I have had is an experience of 1993, 1994, 1995, me being a kid that didn't have friends that were Wednesday nights. Me, my sister would get on the bus or get a lift in. We go Leppings Lane because you could get on there for £7 max. And when you're a kid and a student at school, the cheapest end of the ground was Leppings Lane Lower. So we'd go in there and we'd sit on Leppings Lane Lower. And I know we're going back. There was no issue in 93, 94, 95. We don't highlight that. As Simon has mentioned, we've held international tournaments. We've held cup finals. We've held semi-finals since. We've never had these issues. We've never had any problem whatsoever. I think the statement that the club has released this afternoon has been an absolute top-notch, chef's kiss, as Blair would say. It's been absolutely brilliant. The 4 points that were highlighted in that, we have exceeded the compliance requirements on a safety certificate in terms of the stewards we've provided. Box ticked. There were fewer supporters through that turnstile than tickets were sold and allocated. Box ticked. Newcastle fans didn't turn up. The turnstiles were open well in advance, 30 minutes prior to what they normally open them at. Box ticked. The best one, or the underlining point here, not a single member of that crowd required any sort of medical service, intervention, interaction with the St John's ambulance, with anybody else whatsoever. That picture was taken before the game took place, before the game kicked off. It was posted, I think, at half time. I might be wrong. It was posted before the game had finished by this journalist without foundation. It was an observation that somebody had made and gone, oh my God, here we are. Look at that. It's a bit overcrowded to the naked eye. There's no substance or foundation behind it. That guy wasn't at the back of the West Stand. He didn't see. And those pictures that the Mail have put on of the big red arrow saying everybody goes down that tunnel, I think the Twitter response from the Wednesday fans that have gone, oh, it's quite simple. Let me show you a picture that says gangway 1 that way,
literally.
Gangway 3 that way, gangway 2 that way. If you go to your gangway with your ticket and you sit, I mean, I've got a season ticket. We've got season tickets. We go to games. The first thing you do is you go, right, I'm on row, whatever. I'm in seat, whatever. I'm going to go and find my seat and I'm going to sit down. Listen, I get that it's different. I understand that it's different when you go to away games. I appreciate that. I totally appreciate that. But you are still moving through the right areas to get to the right points well in advance or with enough time to get to where you need to be. I won't have that this is our fault. I'm sorry, it's not.
So to play devil's advocate, Stevie, on that point, I agree with you. A grown-ass man should be able to read a number on a piece of paper, on a sign, right? And you go, oh, I didn't know we're on fucking Shane Lake. Well, what block are you? 1. Well, it says 1 to 5 there. Go that way. I'll go down. I'm going to go down the tunnel, Lake. Fucking hell. What's
Dan, we had Croatians and Turks.
Yeah,
in that stand in 1996.
They use the same numbers that we do as
and the stand has barely changed since then.
The question I'm going to ask on Stevie's point, just to play devil's advocate.
I know where this is going.
Have stewards been there to go, where are you? Go that way. Stop coming down here. Should we have because putting stewards in the tunnel would have been counterproductive, right? We don't know that there might have been stewards at the far side of the tunnel going that way. There was two huge pools of empty seats, right? Mm-hmm. But they went to stand there. And obviously, there's no cure for stupidity. I completely understand that. And in terms of an away day and Northerners and beer and football and crowd mentality, I get it. I understand it. Could we have done anything different? But it sounds like we did more than what we should have.
I think the best response, and I'm going to blow smoke up your arse, the best response was yours. In the hours after that statement with the circles, this is a tunnel, these are the stewards, this is where they're deployed, this is what happens. That's what you're going to get in any ground wherever you go.
Imagine
going to happen.
Luton. Imagine going to
Yeah.
Luton away.
Yeah.
If that scared the shit out of you, go to
Pick a
QPR.
ground. Pick a ground. Pick QPR. Pick Luton. Pick Tottenham Hotspur. Pick the Emirates. Those stewards are given a position to go and stand in. They will stand in those locations. That's where they go. That's where they are expecting people to go and walk to. That's what happens. Yeah. If you go to a concert or you go to Wembley and you go and see a game at Wembley, stewards are deployed at various points where they have to go.
I don't just follow everybody and go, oh, I'm going in down this way now because that's where
do you know what? There are more fans than there are stewards. So stewards have to be deployed strategically in the stand. The only thing I would say,
it's not written on my ticket, like I can't fucking find it, man.
The only thing I would say for objectivity, this has come up. The only thing that has come up that I'd say maybe got a point there, but I don't think this is a Sheffield Wednesday or a South Yorkshire problem, whatever you want to call it. Are the stewards that people are employing in games and grounds now the right people to do stewarding?
I would argue.
The profile of steward that we have at Sheffield Wednesday is exactly the profile that you're going to get in a Premier League, in a Championship, in a League One game. They are people that are paid to do the job that they're doing, and they're paid on par with what
an hour to tell 20 meter juries with cooked
chickens. It's right. You can imagine those stewards that you could see at the top of the tunnel. In front of them, they've got a walkway, which is a yellow painted walkway, which requires that to be. And we've all been to football games where we've stood in gangways and stewards have come up to us and said, excuse me, can you sit in your stand where your seat is? We've all done it at away games, right? And you could not see that yellow concourse running down to the goal because everybody was stood in it, right? Because they chose not to go to their seats. If you were a steward being paid 20 to 25 quid for that match and you're facing a Geordie, now, did you see the guy who was spitting at Dean Windass? He was like 6'3", 6'4". He'd probably been sorry, Josh, yeah. He'd been, that's your fault. That's you usually do that, Dan. He'd been drinking probably since 1 o'clock in the afternoon, right? Okay. So he's 10 men. So if you're a steward who's paid 25 quid and you say, excuse me, can you go and sit in your seat, sir? Can you imagine that bloke's going to go, oh, yeah, of course I will, mate. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, sorry, Pet. I didn't even realise I've not even
what's happened and changed in football grounds nowadays is there's no police, right? Because when I worked, your alternate was if that fan chose to stand up all the time or that fan chose to not do what you said, you went on your radio and you said, can I have a police officer to gangway B? Police officer turned up.
Their own
police officer turned up, and I guarantee you, 2 officers would turn up and that person would either sit down or would be ejected from the ground. Exactly.
Okay. Let's wrap this up, Ben. I've not come to you on this yet. So is there anything you want to add before I move on to our snazzy quiz?
Yeah. I think on part of the Mail, it's sensationalised bullshit. I know probably a little bit about how journalists work because I've done a 3-year course on it. The words, as we've said, that is used, the amount of clicks that will have got is unimaginable. From whatever side you're on, whether you're a Liverpool fan that has emotional connection to that, Newcastle fan who clicks on it, and then you've got Wednesday side who will also click on it to slate it rather than get on board with it. That's why he's done it. That's all people like that do. You look at who did it. Was that Craig Hope?
There was a Craig. Yeah, Craig Hope was the Daily Mail.
Craig Hope is from Daily Mail. All the shit with Steve Bruce and all that fallout. Guess who that was with? It was with him. Rightly or wrongly, he does things to create headlines. That's all that he does at Daily Mail because that's how it works. That's how they work. It's all been, like the language that's being used, even today, when Wednesday made the statement that they made, goes on to Sky, Aileen McQueen sat there, there's a statement from Sheffield Wednesday that took a long time coming. Yeah, because if you say something wrong to do with this, it gets even worse.
Yeah.
Oh, people are sharpening the knives on it. Sharpening the knife. They're waiting for somebody to say the wrong thing, which is why I wanted to tread so carefully on this topic this evening.
Can I just ask a quick? Sorry to interrupt, Ben. Can I ask a quick question before we lose the flow? Has the guy? It's Hardy, isn't it? The first guy that wrote or did the. Has he come back and done anything since in terms of a comment, a report? This guy's literally just gone.
Out and gone back.
See you later. Speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, look at that! That's fucking mental. And then the day after he's gone, the FA are looking at it, and then the FA and Sheffield Wednesday have gone.
And then there's been tweets later on from I think it was ITV, the one I'd seen, saying, "Can we use this as in our program? Can we use this tweet?" Yes, certainly. Of course you can. Reply straight away. All he wants is attention. All the Mail want is to create headlines. And you've got Sky doing things like that. And the one thing that knocks it all out straight away is the good old rise of the vlogger. Because that video of him walking...
that geezer, he's having the best time. He's having a really good time.
Walking through the turnstile, walking down that tunnel, stood right in the middle, went light shows on, which is more or less, give or take,
a minute before
2 minutes, 90 seconds to when that picture was taken.
After his picture, yeah.
And he's there with his phone out. Newcastle fans are singing, light shows going on. If you're in a crush, like if you're in the vocabulary that's being used, you are not stood there with your phone out singing with people around you just stood there normally. It's fucking bullshit. It's bullshit.
Okay, Stevie,
one
last
more.
one.
Give me one more, last one. Just a personal one from a podcast point of view. It'd be remiss of me if I didn't mention this, but the fact that we were where we were Saturday night, we all walked out buzzing, happy as Larry, text messages, group chats flying, beers swilling, everything's flowing. We got messages. I got a message, I think you did as well, Dan, from Vic saying, I'm on Radio 5 in the morning, listening, 9:20, blah, blah, blah. I think she posted that she was going to be interviewed about the game. Bless her heart. She's woke up Sunday morning, got herself ready, not feeling the best, didn't go to the game on Saturday. Here's me. I'm ready to talk about what my club has done against Newcastle United. And for the biggest national radio show, Sunday morning pretty much, to come out there and go, right, we've heard about this report. And Vic had no prior knowledge. She had no notice or information that they were going to ask her about a game and a situation within the game that she'd not seen the tweet. She had no knowledge that was going to happen. They didn't pre-warn her that was going to happen. I thought that was terrible. I thought that was absolutely abhorrent. And I think the way that she has conducted herself since, behaved, and the way that she managed herself on national radio at zero notice is a testament to her. And I think she represented our podcast with the best possible dignity that she could. And I'm really proud of her.
I think you're right. I think what that ambush, as it were, I think what that did was very much show that this is something to garner headlines. So listen, let's move on from it. And the club have put a statement out. I think we're all waiting for now is the FA to go, actually, we did loads of work on it, lads. This prick needs to get in the bin. So in order to change the tone just slightly before we start talking about Wickham away, Mark McGuinness is still with us. So we haven't got much to talk about there. Now, chaps, it's quiz time. So Martin Beebe's been on. He sent us a few quizzes before. And what I've got a list of players in front of me. In our 8 seasons in the Premier League specifically, only 12 players scored more than 10 goals for the club. This is in total, not in one season. Can you name them? Right? So we're trying to get 12 names. So it goes Stevie, Simon, Ben. Stevie, I'll come to you first.
Since going down.
No, in the Premier League. So in our 8 seasons in the Prem.
Who scored more than 12?
Who scored more than 12? Hang on. No, who scored more than 10? There are 12 players.
Right, okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
In it.
Wow.
So, Stevie.
Oh, Christ. Surely. David Hurst.
David Hurst is second on the list with 34 goals. Let's go with Simon.
Mark Bright.
Mark Bright is top of the list with 49 goals. Ben.
Di Canio.
Paolo Di Canio is quite about 8th and 9th with 12 goals in the Premier League. He's in the list. This is where it gets a bit tougher now, lads. So go on then, Stevie.
Carboni.
Benito Carboni is 5th on the list with 23 goals. Simon.
Andy Booth.
Andy Booth is 3rd with 25. Ben. This is difficult. Come on, Ben. It's an audio medium, so silence is not available.
You're on mute, Ben.
Were you on mute?
Paul Warhurst.
Paul Warhurst. Paul Warhurst. Not there, I'm afraid, Ben. That's put you out, brother. I'm afraid that not there, mate. Not there in the plus 10. So right then, Stevie, back to you.
I'm going Waddler.
Chris Wadley's at the bottom of the list. He's 12th on the list, and he's 10 goals, just barely scraping it. So right then, Simon, it's you to draw it up here, pal.
Gerald Sibon.
Giles the Builder.
Gerald Sibon.
Oh, Gerald Seabon. I'm afraid not. No, he's not on the list, mate. I'm afraid he's not there. So, Stevie, you've won this one, but there are. Let's have a look. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players still left, mate. See which ones you can get.
I would have gone De Builder.
De Builder is on the list. He's got bare 10 as well. The other 5 are
Palmer.
Carlton
Palmer.
Carlton Palmer's not there. Guy Whittingham's number 4.
Ooh.
We've got Benito.
How many?
How many? 24.
How many?
And then we've got Benito Carboni, 23. Chris Bart-Williams got 16. Flash Gordon got 13. Gordon Watson. I thought you'd have got that one, Si. Mark Pembridge got 12. Paolo Di Canio, 12. And then the surprise one on the list for me, but he did play for us for ages.
Not Peter Atherton, is it?
No, it's Graham Idai died. Gareth Keenan from The Office got 11 goals. He's in there. So that's show that one up. So, well, congratulations there, Simon. Listen, we're really tight for time, so I'm not going to discuss Wickham too much. What I want you to do is, sorry, Stevie, my apologies, is tell me a prediction for Wickham. Steve.
Oh, me. It's going to be shit. It's going to be an absolute climb down from last weekend. I'll take a point.
So
1-1.
1-1.
Yeah.
Simon.
Scored settled from last season, 2-1 Wednesday.
2-1 Wendy. What about yourself, Benjamin?
1-0 Wednesday.
1-0 Wednesday. I think I might go for a score draw. I think it's going to be 1-1 myself. So listen, thanks a lot for staying with us tonight on the Wednesday week. I appreciate that there's been some topics discussed that, like I said, are quite an emotive subject. If you've got any feedback for us or you want to get back in touch, by all means, we'll discuss whatever you want to talk about. If you email us at twwpodcast@gmail.com and we will talk about it. If it's good radio, like, you know what I mean? Thanks a lot, Richard, for your email. Thanks a lot for joining me tonight. Stevie, Simon, Ben. See you later.
The Wednesday week is sponsored by Michael Constantine Wealth Management. We bet you can't find a financial advisor closer to Hillsborough Stadium.